For modern technology, PowerPoint is working. All right, good morning, everybody. How are you enjoying the con so far? Great? All right, very good. Quick announcement about t-shirts. So we have talked about the possibility of the few of you of swapping out your shirt for another size. After lunch today, it is going to be free for all time. You can swap out your shirt for a different size if you like. If you have a token that you haven't turned in and gotten marked already, you can just ask for whatever size you like. All right. And of course, don't forget the party is tonight downstairs in the nightclub. So our first speaker this morning is Mr. John Clark. He is an InfoSec guy. He is a Microsoft trainer. He is a U.S. Marine. And in his spare time, he is also a behavioral economist and apparently a Pinky the Brain fan. So give it up for John Clark.
All right, we'll try this. This is working. Okay, great. No leash. Well, good morning, everybody. I just want to say welcome. Thank you for your patience with the issues that we had. It's no big deal. What you'll really be disappointed, though, is that you sat and waited for these slides, and you're going to say, that's his slides? We waited for those? So sorry about that. I'm not a real big PowerPoint guy. I don't like it a lot. Who does not like PowerPoint? See, and I knew that. Well, guess what? Even though it's running in PowerPoint, this was created in Haiku Deck. So technically it's PowerPoint, but it's not really. But at any rate, so these are a couple of my friends. They're only going to be joining us on this slide. This is Pinky and the Brain. One is a genius. The other isn't, you know what I'm going to go. So at any rate, I get one chuckle. So hyperbolic discounting. What in the world does that even mean? So I was talking with somebody yesterday. It was Wednesday. He is a marketing person in our office, and I was just talking about this talk, and I told the title, and then I started talking with him about what it was and everything, and then he said, can I give you a piece of advice? And I said, well, sure, I'm always willing to take some advice. He said, you might want to change the title. Well, it's a little late. It's already been published. So, at any rate, I would agree with him 100%. It probably isn't the best title ever, but it's really kind of what we're here to talk about, so why not? So, at any rate, hyperbolic discounting is very simply put. It sounds very fancy, but all it is a concept that we are more willing to take a smaller, short-term reward than we are to wait for a larger reward later. Make sense? Pretty simple. So I guess Cliff introduced me a little bit, tell you a little bit more about myself. So I am a former Marine, and that was a lot of fun. I was in, everybody ready to laugh? Military intelligence, the ultimate oxymoron. So at any rate, I did signals intelligence and had a lot of fun driving around in a Humvee and listening to bad guys on radios and trying to figure out what they were saying. And then it was long enough ago that we would intercept and we would get words and phrases, encrypted stuff, but it was all hand encrypted and we would hand break it using a bunch of math. So it was a lot of fun and all that good stuff, but eventually I fell down the side of a mountain. I broke off the tip of L5-S1 in my lower back, and that led to some serious issues, and I could no longer be a U.S. Marine. So I went out of the Marine Corps, and then I went off to find a job. And so I ended up in computers and all that stuff. Security took off, blah, blah, blah. Here I stand today. So back to hyperbolic discounting. So hyperbolic discounting, again, this idea of I'm more willing to take a short-term reward right now rather than delay that gratification till later. It comes up in lots of different ways in our life. And we all have a tendency to do this. It's a cognitive bias that we have. We don't know why. There's theories about it and things like that. But there's essentially two branches to economics that concern itself with this area. And one of those branches, the more traditional branch, the one that we're most used to, is called rational economics. So rational economics basically states that people will tend to behave in a rational manner. You can expect that say the stock market, for example. People will say, what's the maximum of the stock market? You should buy low and sell high. Has anybody noticed the volume of the stock market right now, that it's an all-time historical high? What's going on in the stock market? A lot of activity or very little? A lot of activity. There's a lot of buying going on. Well, there's obviously a lot of selling. You can't buy without selling. You can't sell without somebody else buying. But they've made our economic models on rational behavior. People will tend to behave in a rational manner. Another way we can look at this is, say, theft. And by the way, let me just say this right now in case I forget to say it later. I am greatly indebted to Dan Ariely, A-R-I-E-L-Y. He is the person whose books I have been reading, and I've delved into this theory. And he has done a lot of studies in this stuff, and this is one of his examples that he uses to explain this. But so if people behave rationally all the time, we could think of it in terms of if you and I were on a desert island and I saw that you had worked for maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes to climb up a tree and harvest a coconut. And then you had spent some time getting the husk off that coconut and getting it ready to consume and all that sort of thing and done all that work. And then you went off to go do something else. I could see your coconut left there unattended. And what I might do is go and try to grab your coconut and run away with it, thinking, you know what? As long as I can get away from him and it'll take him more effort to catch me than it will for him to just go ahead and get another coconut, rationally, it's a good move on my part. All I have to do is just kind of do the math and figure out how much effort is he willing to put into catching me. And if it's greater than what he would spend for the coconut, everything will be great. As long as he behaves rationally, he'll just go get himself another coconut. But the problem is, he might tend to behave, or he or you or she might tend to behave irrationally and say, you know what? You took my coconut and I will follow you to the ends of the earth and kill you because you took my coconut. And who would hunt somebody down if they took your coconut? See, I would. Former Marine, right? You know, I mean, I was in the Corps when Mad Dog Mattis was in the Corps. You know, be polite to everyone you meet and always have a plan to kill them. That's what we learned. So it's just that reality. But most of us don't tend to behave rationally in a lot of situations, actually in most situations. So rational economics basically is like that. It's the thought that people will tend to behave rationally. Some people, though, tend to behave irrationally, and I'm kind of one of them. So I picked this particular picture for a reason. Who among you has ever put wires into a wiring closet? Anyone? In your mind, this is what it would look like always, right? Then there's the irrational behavior, irrational economics. I swear to you, when I built the wiring closet, it really did look like that. It really honestly did. And now it looks like that. It wasn't planned, it just happened. Because you know what? I gotta patch this. I'll get the right cable later. Later's a great time to do things. Who has ever done things later? Sure, of course, we all do. It's very easy to do. And it's a simple way to go about this stuff. So I want to continue with some of these examples as we get into this, and eventually I will tie this back to IT and security. By the way, this is interesting. I'm speaking to a group full of hackers about economics, and I have an English Lit degree. So I did eventually get a master's in some computer thing or other. I forget what it's called. It's been a few years ago. But at any rate, we tend to do this. But let's talk about this idea of short-term rewards versus long-term rewards and why one is easier to choose than the other. So here's a picture of mowing the lawn, a very exciting pastime, one that I think started far too soon this year and is going in a far too rapid of an interval. So it'd be great if there was a command we could just issue to the lawn to tell it to grow, slower, like put a sleep cycle in there or something like that. But it just doesn't work that way. So basically, is there anybody in the room right now who needs to mow your lawn? I mean, okay, got a few of you guys. So tonight there's going to be a party downstairs, right? You could go home and mow your lawn, couldn't you? Or you could put it off and maybe mow it tomorrow. And I got some stuff to do tomorrow. Maybe I'll mow it next week. Who is now next week when you were from last week when you said you'd mow your lawn? Yeah, right? So it happens. We all tend to do this. And we can even do this when there's odds against us. Meaning, if I go home tonight and mow my lawn, I know it's going to take me about an hour. So we live on about 11 acres down south of Missouri on some farmland, and we have only an acre that's cleared of that. But it's really hilly and it's got issues and all that sort of stuff. There's lots of stuff to go around. So it's about an hour to mow the lawn. If I do it tonight, it'll take me about an hour. But I know I'm busy tomorrow and I'm busy on Sunday, and I'm not going to get to it this weekend if I don't go home and do it tonight. But I know if I wait till next week, because there'll be more sticks down and things like that I've already cleared and now will have to be cleared again, it's probably going to take me more like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. But I'm still very likely to delay it to a week from now. So what I'm doing is I'm saying in essence that the pleasure of not mowing the lawn, or in this case actually attending the party tonight, is going to cost me an hour of time in the future, and it's a trade-off that I'm willing to make because the here and now seems more appealing to me. It just seems like something I would rather do. So there it is in the present, but if you wait, you get into a situation like this, and that's what the future begins to look like when we delay these decisions. We have a tendency to do this because it's just a thing that it's hard to make these comparisons between two things that are unlike. Another example that Dan Ariely uses in the book is that, by the way, the name of the book is Predictably Irrational. So if you'd like to read it on your own, it's, 300 or so pages, something like that. It's not too bad, and it's not super technical reading. It's an enjoyable thing. He's a very pleasant gentleman to read. He writes very well. So it's more like almost a novel of things he's done in the past. So it's very interesting. Predictably irrational. But at any rate, one of the other examples that he gives in the book is, let's all imagine, if you will, that you were going to go to a store and buy a nice pen. Not a great pen, not like a Mont Blanc or something like that, but just a nice pen, maybe a $15 pen. So you go into the store, you make your selection, you take it up to the register, and as you're approaching the register, you've maybe asked a couple questions of the person who's working the register, and they just look at you and say, you know what, you're a really nice person, you've got a great smile, you've been very enjoyable to interact with. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but our competitor has this same pen for $7. $7. And they're only like 15 minutes away. It's a 15-minute walk. It's nice out today. It's 70. It's sunny. You said you weren't in a hurry. You were looking for something to do. So maybe you want to take that 15-minute walk and go get the pen. Now, who thinks they might take the walk? Not saying you definitely would, but maybe you would consider taking the walk. It's a possibility. Okay, not that many. A few, okay. Nobody raising their hand like this. It's like kind of like Methodists when they're in church and people are singing and they want to worship and they're going like this because they think they're not supposed to raise their hands. I don't think people think I'm Pentecostal. So it's, yeah, I saw a few kind of like one of these going up. So yeah, a few people maybe would consider taking the walk. Not a big deal. But let's just take the same scenario, more or less, with a slightly different context. You're going into a store, you want to buy a new laptop. The laptop is $1,050. And you've had interactions with the sales associate, you've had conversations, you're enjoying each other's company, you're getting along, you're having a good time together, and, you go to buy the thing, and they look at you and say, you know what, you've got a really nice smile, I like you, you've been really fun to interact with, I've got to let you know this, I probably shouldn't, I'm going to get in trouble, but do you know our competitor has this same laptop for $1,042? And it's only a 15-minute, why are you laughing? It's only a 15-minute walk. It's a nice day, it's 70 degrees out. Who would take the walk to save the $8? I don't see any hand, real nice and high. Who would take the walk? We got one. All right? Why does the context matter? It's the same $8. Your bank account does not know why it still has an extra $8 in it, does it? It's the percentage. You're an idiot. You're up there. You're going to get an English Lit degree. Why are you even talking to me? So it's the same $8. But because of the context, we change our frame of reference. And it makes us think about things maybe differently than we should. So we all have this tendency to discount effort in the future. We think effort in the future is going to be easier. So do you know, all of you know, an incredibly wonderful, amazing person? You really, it's not me, trust me. You do, you know an amazing person. This person is going to exercise regularly. This person is going to eat right. This person yesterday, and I haven't seen what's out there today yet, but yesterday there was a lot of food after the morning session out there. Most of it was in the form of donuts and pastries, and it looked really good. There was also a very small bowl that had some apples and oranges and bananas in it, right? So I actually ate an orange. I did not eat the pastry. And I stood there and I was peeling my orange and feeling sorry for myself, and I saw all you people eating the pastries and not liking any of you. And somebody walked up and I saw they grabbed an orange too. And I looked at them and I said, you know what? It's not fair. I want a donut. I did. But we do. We all know this amazing person that wouldn't choose the donut. We do. We know this person. And we know this person who's going to go to the gym regularly. They're going to do it. They're going to commit to it, and they're going to buckle down and do it. We know this person who is never, and I mean never, going to pull out a cell phone and look at it while they're driving. I'm not reading it. I'm just checking it. They're never going to do that. They're never, because they've seen the statistics. They know it's not. We know this person that's always going to wear their seatbelt. We know this person that would just never, ever talk harshly to their significant other. or yell at their kids or lose their temper or anything like that. We know this person. They're a wonderful person. Who is this person? Well, but they do in our minds. It's the future me. See, the future me is going to go to the gym. The future me, next year I'm going to go on a diet. I'm waiting for that New Year's resolution. Then I'm going to get to work. I'm going to buckle down. And that's what I'm going to do. See, this is the theoretical. This is going to be me next year. I'm going to go out and I'm going to run a marathon. Anybody ever told yourself that? Well, I've never said a marathon, but I'm going to go run a 5K. I'm going to do this. Or I'm going to just walk 2 miles a day every day without fail. I'm going to buy the Fitbit. I'm going to sync it to my Android or iPhone. I'm going to participate in my company's wellness program. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to sleep an extra hour every night. And those deadlines, I am going to do the work early. I'm going to have everything ready in order so that I don't get into crunch time and have to do this. This is the future me, and I am a wonderful person. But the problem is, even though this is a theoretical, this is our idea of what we're going to do, this is more the reality. When the time comes, it's so much easier to turn on Netflix. So I'm presenting here today. I had a slideshow to make and all that. Guess what I did when I got home last night? I opened up Haiku Deck. I got about 5 slides in. And then I was like, I kind of got stumped. I wasn't sure where I wanted to go and how I wanted to exactly say things, what pictures I wanted to use. And I know it looks like you're looking at this going, this guy didn't work very hard on his slides. Let me tell you, it's really hard, for me anyway, to say things with fewer words than it is with a lot of words. So it takes time and effort. But I got about 4 or 5 slides in, couldn't find the right pictures, and I'm like, well, I think the 8-bit guy has a new presentation on YouTube. Any 8-bit guy fans? Yeah, I mean, he's like takes apart Commodore 64s, Commodore PETs, and all that old cool stuff. He's working on them. He's refurbishing, making the all yellowed casings look white again. It's just so cool. Check him out. He's a cool guy. He actually just wrote a new game, or he's just doing a Kickstarter to write a game for MS-DOS that will have CGA graphics. Just fascinating. He's writing it all in assembly. So just a neat guy. He did a Kickstarter. And in one day, his goal was $30,000. He raised $80,000 of the 30. So the guy's just like killing it. And check him out, 8-bit guy on YouTube. So I watched a little bit of 8-bit guy. I watched some unboxing videos where people just send him stuff and he opens them up. And and the next thing I knew, it was like 12:30. Like, wow, I can't believe I'm still doing that. Okay, get back to the present. But see, this is where we go. This is where we tend to go. We have this tendency to do this sort of thing. Now, I'm about to put up a slide that I find very humbling, a little bit embarrassing, but it's the worst example I could find. And I specifically chose it due to the nature of the angle that it was taken, as well as it has a kind of a built-in timestamp that most of you will be able to determine exactly when this was. Oh, do I really want to do this? Why not? That's me. Can you guess when that was? Eclipse, right? So I was out with my family looking up the eclipse, being a mouth breather apparently, and I don't know if you can see from the profile. So, I used to weigh, this is not this cycle, I used to weigh, remember Marine Corps, back injury, can't run, can't jump, can't climb, all that stuff. It was bad for about 10 years. And I think finally what happened is that little bone fragment that I broke off of my vertebrae just kept sawing away at all those nerve endings, and I think it just cut them all off and they don't hurt anymore. So, that's awesome. So, at any rate, so I did the Atkins diet. Now, I think they call it paleo now, but I think it's the same thing. I think it's just a marketing trick. But at any rate, I did the Atkins diet for 10 and a half years. Wildly successful. I went from 405 pounds down to about 215. But I was what they call skinny fat, because all I was doing was dieting. There was zero exercise. And I did it, and I was successful, and I kept the weight off. Everything was fine. And then about 3 years ago, I noticed, it's getting a little tight. Let me just loosen that up a notch. A couple weeks later, that's still kind of tight. This belt must be defective. Let me loosen that up another notch. And and you don't think about it. I got to buy new pants. Maybe I'll just get a bigger size. The next thing I knew, I was back up to 315 pounds, down up from 215. I had gained 100 pounds. So I went and talked to the doctor, and I said, "Doctor, I just don't understand. There's something wrong with me. I'm doing the same things I've been doing for 10 years, and I'm starting to gain weight." He's like, "Well, you're doing one thing differently." I'm like, well, what's that? He's like, "Well, you got old." You got old. Your metabolism slowed down. It happens. He's like, "What do you do for a living?" Well, I told him. He's like, "Oh, yeah, you don't move. You sit and you do this all day." You know, and when you're not doing this, you're doing this. You know? And so in November, the day after Thanksgiving, notice the timing of that, the day after Thanksgiving, I decided I'm going to change my life. So I went on a diet. I said, I'm done with the fads. I'm just going to eat a caloric deficit. I'm just going to eat less calories than I burn. Now I looked up how many calories it said I had burned a day at a resting rate. If you do nothing, you'll burn this many calories a day. Let me just tell you something about all those charts and all that stuff. Those are great if you're average. Now I happen to be 5'16". Sorry, 1.93 meters. No. So I'm 6'4". BMI is not my friend. All right? Body mass index, when you get tall, you gotta be really skinny to be average. You know? Right now, here's the good news, folks. I've made my way from obese. I'm merely, from morbidly obese. I'm merely obese now. So I'm a little better than that guy. I'm getting there. But what's weird is this time, my weight's different. So I'm actually 260 right now. I'm 45 pounds heavier, but my biceps are like 2 inches bigger. My chest is bigger. Ooh, look at a microphone on. My chest is bigger, you know, in the good way, not the man boob way. So it's, this guy's like, I don't believe he just said that. What's wrong with him? So, you know, it's different, but my waist is the same size it was when I was 215. So it's just, I had to make a decision and I had to do something different. So I'm a guy who's very binary. I'm on or I'm off. I don't believe in shades of gray, not even 50 of them. So I just, it's not my thing. It's black or white. Everything is do it or don't do. Hey, didn't Yoda say something like that, you know? There is no try, there's only do or not do. So I'm 40-ish, plus about, 7, 8, 9 more years old. Sub 50, we'll say it that way. So I'm barely sub 50. And I decided to do Tony Horton's P90X3, which is like insane. What am I thinking? I'm 315 pounds. I'm morbidly obese. I can't do anything. I'm trying to do push-ups and I'm like, I can't do it. But you know what? I just did it. I just went for it. And if I couldn't do them, I got on my knees and did them. I just did them old school style, off my knees, until a week ago, I was doing plyometric push-ups. I did sets of them. I did 4 sets of them. Plyometric push-ups are where you push your whole body up off the ground, and you fly through the air, and you turn a little bit, and then you land and do some more. I was doing them because I chose to make a change. I didn't care about the short-term gain. I just blew it off. I said, short-term doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter to me at all. So I don't care. So that's just one example from my life. Here's another one. $1.87. $1.87. What the heck does $1.87 mean? We used to be, my wife and I, dual income, no kids. We were dinks, as they're known. Dual income, no kids. $1.87 is how much money we had in savings and checking combined with 4 days to go to payday and no groceries in the house. Because we lived like everybody else. We didn't behave rationally. We behaved irrationally. We enjoyed short-term benefits and denied long-term gains. We just decided, you know what? The long-term gains aren't worth it. I'm probably going to die anyway before I retire. Why save for retirement now? So we had $1.87 in our checking and savings combined. And we also had like $140,000 in debt, not counting our mortgage. It was crazy. So now I have 4 kids. My wife actually stays at home to raise our kids. So we're single income. And, we've got plenty of money in the checking account. We get plenty of money in savings. My boss is in here somewhere. Why am I saying this out loud? I need a raise. I've got 4 kids to feed. But it's just about choices, right? So we started making different choices. We started saying, you know what, we're going to make short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. I don't need a new car every year. I'm going to drive the '04 Honda. I'm going to drive the older thing. We're going to live in a modest house and not keep upgrading all the time. We're not going to have the latest and greatest. I mean, clearly I bought this shirt in like 74, right? So we're not going to have the greatest things in the world. But you know what? What we've learned is to be content with what we have and make sacrifices. Not that we're being paragons. We screw up all the time, okay? We make mistakes like everybody else. It's not really about me. It's just about the things that can happen when you decide that, you know what, I want to eat this cookie because this cookie tastes good, but short-term is a benefit. I get that dopamine release, chocolate, all that good stuff happens. I start getting excited. I get that little kick, little caffeine boost. Everything feels good. Oh, I'm kind of happy now. Yay, life is good. But then, that long-term, that future me, he never comes to materialize. So we have to decide to do things differently. And it's about changing the context of how we think. So that was about me. This is about you. That's you, by the way. Looks a little bit like the guy on the shirt, doesn't it? Or the gal on the shirt. We really can't tell, I don't think. So let's talk about you for now. I just want to ask you guys a couple of questions. So if I were to offer you, does anybody here like chocolate? By the way, notice this is hypothetical. I'm not offering you chocolate. But so this gentleman back here was brave enough to raise his hand. If I were to offer you a choice, you can have a half a box of chocolates today, or you can have a whole box of chocolates 1 week from today. Which would you choose? Oh, you're a liar. Would you really? And that's okay if you would. I'm just teasing you. Or are you just trying to get me... So you hate asking questions at HackerCons because you guys are so uncooperative. You know, because I'm the same way. This is what I get for what I did when I was in school. When I was the one who was annoying the teacher all the time. I get it. So would you legitimately wait? Maybe. It would probably be a harder choice if I had it in front of you, wouldn't it? But maybe you consider, I might not. It's kind of a tougher, because everybody agree that is at least somewhat of a consideration? Okay, so somewhat of a consideration. How about if I offered you this choice instead? And I think this is an easy answer, and I will believe you this time, and I'll believe everyone. 1 year from today, I will give you a half a box of chocolates. Or 1 year and 1 week from today, I'll give you a whole box. Which do you want? Easier choice, right? Even if you would have the discipline to put it off and wait, a year out, it's so much easier. Why? It's a 1 week differential. It doesn't matter. It's getting an understanding of this cognitive bias that we have toward that. So whether I offer you the half a box of chocolates now or a year from now, or the whole box, and I know that's an apple, not chocolates, but you know, whatever. Nobody's going to say they care about an apple. So, but now subliminally, I'm telling you, pick the apple. Pick the apple. So I believe they'll have apples outside later. So I'm a little animated. I'm sorry. It's like, where did this guy come from? You know, at any rate, but St. Louis. So it's the humidity. It makes me crazy. So, by the way, I bought a house that has a sauna in it. I live in Missouri. Who puts a sauna in a house? Whatever. So, how about I go outside? Look, I'm in a sauna. So I brought the outdoors in. So it's the original concept. They just didn't get it right. But at any rate, we have the ability to do this and make these decisions based on our cognitive bias, the more awareness that we have of it. It's just all about framing things in the right context. You guys have probably all seen this before, right? Which orange spot is bigger? Now we all know, we've seen it before. What's the answer? They're both the same. But the first time you looked at it, you didn't get it, did you? You have to think about it. You have to kind of like, it's like those old space shuttle pictures where you had to like cross your eyes to see the picture. You had to stop and think. The context, even though we know, we can think about it rationally, we can pause, the context shows us this. It makes us say, are they the same? You have to think about it. The context is what makes it hard or difficult. And sometimes it's easy like this because obviously it's an optical illusion, so you have to think, I'm trying to be tricked optically. What am I going to do to overcome that? But sometimes the context is hard to figure out. Now, in case your boss is here, please don't raise your hand. Just think about it to yourself. Your spouse calls. You're at the office. And says, little Susie needs a red pen to finish her homework, and we don't have one in the house. Do you have time to go to the store and get one? No, I really don't. Well, could you just grab one from the office? It's just a pen. It's a red pen. They won't mess it. It's, I don't know what they cost, 89 cents, whatever. If you buy them in bulk, they're cheaper, but let's just say you're going to Walgreens and getting a one-off, 89 cents. Would you mind doing that? Would you bring it home? Don't raise your hands. I'll raise my hand. Where is my boss? Raise your hand if you're my boss. I don't see him. Oh, there he is in the back, of course. Close your eyes for this part. Would you take the pen? You would. I mean, most of us would. And we wouldn't really feel bad about it because we work. We probably even have good intentions of bringing it back. Because it's not about the theft of the pen. It's about the hassle of having to go and get one. So some of you just think about, would you just consider, would you evaluate taking the pen maybe? All right? So that's one context. It's 89 cents. We're stealing it. Maybe some of you think, I wouldn't do that. And that's okay. That's probably better than me, okay, quite honestly. But sometimes convenience, especially when you feel no one's getting harmed, is an easier way to go. But let me paint a very similar scenario in a slightly different light. Let's say, same conversation, same phone call, but the office miraculously has no red pens. You have no cash, you forgot your wallet at home, you've got no way to produce this pen for your wife before you get home, and you just don't have time, so she's going to get an F, the whole thing's going to fall apart, your marriage is on the rocks because of this thing. But you know, down in the basement, or not the basement, but the first floor of the building you work in, is a little stationery store, and they sell pens, and they're 89 cents. And with the sales tax in your particular precinct that you live in, it comes up to exactly $1. $1. And you also happen to know that your office keeps some petty cash. You know where it is, you know it's not surveilled, and you know you could go take $1 and you get away with it. Would any of you even remotely consider going and no way! We would never go and take that $1, would we? Nobody, none of us would. But we're still stealing from our employer. It's the same amount of loss to the employer. And I'm not saying this to give you a bum trip or say you're a bad person. It's to make you think about cognitive bias. Cash is weird. Cash does weird things to us. Cash is powerful. It's a powerful negotiating tool. I have bought I buy used cars, and I don't buy them from lots, I buy them from people. And I always buy cars the exact same way. I find the car, I look for ones that don't have pictures because they're not getting any calls. By the way, you're trying to sell a car on Craigslist, put some pictures up. Nobody wants to call you if you don't have pictures up. But I do, because I'm like, nobody's calling them. They're going to be feeling bad about having their car on Craigslist. So I'll go and I go and I waste some time going and looking at clunkers, but I'll go and if they're asking, I don't know, $6,000 for the car, I'll take like $4,200 in cash and $100 bills crisp. And I'll say, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. Hold out your hand. And I count out 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and I'll count $4,200 into their hand. And I'll say, look, I'm not saying that's all your car's worth. I'm saying that's what I'm willing to pay you for it today. The money's in your hand. You can be done with Craigslist and all the weirdos. All you have to do is say yes, or you can hand me back the cash. Oh boy, I have never gotten the cash back. Never. We have this weird thing that happens in our brain when we get possession of something. When we have it in our hot little hands, man, do we think it's worth something. We think it's like, wow, this is the cat's pajamas. Is that old school? That's old school, isn't it? But look at my shirt, guys. It's got to be old school. So we just think it's the greatest thing when we own it. I own 6 electric bass guitars. 6. I don't play electric bass. I used to. The future me, he's going to sell those. He's going to get them ready for sale, clean them up, polish them, put them out in the sun, get really nice pictures against black velvet and all that good stuff. He's going to put them on eBay, Craigslist, and TalkBass.com. He's going to sell those things. I've got 6 basses taking up space in my house. And the reason I'm not selling them is because when I put them up for auction, guess how much I'm going to ask for them? Too much. Because I think they're worth more than they are. Because I have them. What's the hardest part of selling a house? Well, selling it. But I mean, you're stupid. But the hardest part of selling a house is honestly just really pricing it appropriately. And if we have any realtors in a room, probably not. But if we do, they would tell you people tend to want to overvalue their home. Why? Because it's theirs. So the things that we hold close to us, we have this bias to think that it's very important. So I've got 17 minutes left. I said I was going to talk about IT a little bit. Let's talk about IT. So we've talked about me. Oops, this one's open. I'll use it. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I'll reduce. Me and Jack Johnson. All right, so we've talked about me. We've talked about you. Let's talk about them. Who are them? It's the shadowy figures that approve your budget. Okay, whoever they are. So we tend to get into this idea of an adversarial relationship sometimes when budget cycles come up. We tend to think very siloed, like this is my department's budget, that's their department's budget. I keep all of mine, and if I could get some of theirs, that would be great, but they certainly can't have any of mine. It's very very easy to begin thinking that way. And so when we think about this in terms of how can we use this knowledge that we're obtaining, and again, I'm just scratching the surface of this stuff. The research is extensive. It's been around for years. When I said it, I believe in the abstract, I said it was a relatively modern thought process, meaning it's less than like 300 years old. So it's probably about 20, 25, 35 years old or something like that. It's been around a short time. And it's not throwing out all of rational economics. It's just looking at them in the light of, is there something else going on? Because the models never seem to quite work the way they're supposed to. So taking this knowledge that you're getting today, and it's really not so much knowledge as maybe hopefully taking this interest you might pick up today and have your knowledge peaked as you begin to explore this topic on your own, and making suppositions and making thoughts about how would I go about persuading people to my point of view. Now, this is just because it's what I said I was going to talk about. I'm going to talk about getting funding for your security initiatives from senior executives. But can you guys kind of begin to see, I hope you do because you're all hackers. You take everything apart and break it and say, I'm going to put it back together a different way. That's what a hacker is. And you're going to say, you know, he's talking about this thing, but I can see how this would maybe impact user awareness training. I can see how this would impact thinking about what are hackers doing when they're attacking us. If you're blue team, thinking about what does red team want. If you're red team, thinking about what does blue team want. And begin saying, how can I exploit these cognitive biases? Most of us here are a bunch of exploiters. That's what we do. We look for weaknesses and exploit them. Whether we do it for the blue team or the red team or in some other capacity, that's what we typically do each day. And the idea is, how can we take this idea that there are cognitive biases, that we can see them in our own lives, that this has probably got some merit to it, even if I don't care for him, his shirt is obnoxious, he has no hair, his beard is gray, you know, if you don't like me, it doesn't matter. Do you at least have these ideas being piqued in your mind and thinking about this? And how do I take that back? So in this context, I can take it back to, oh my goodness, my fitness watch thing just went off, and it's like, you've burned 500 calories. I guess I'm really excited up here. So that's fantastic. I don't have to work out tonight. No, I still will. But at any rate, so how can I take this and not exploit? It just seems so bad, but I guess that's what we're doing. How can I take this and touch other aspects of my responsibilities? And so how can I get this cognitive bias to invade the boardroom, as it were? So the thing we have to remember about boardrooms for most of us is that most people, again, tend to think, what's the short-term reward? What's the short-term benefit? Hey, we need to go and spend, I don't know, pick your number. It doesn't really matter. The dollar amount is irrelevant. But just think in terms of your budget. But we'll say, just to make it obscured a little bit, I need to go and spend 50 yabarlas on this new security infrastructure. What is a yarbala? It doesn't matter. Whatever it is to you, it doesn't matter. It's a percentage of the budget. You're asking for an increase. So I need 50 yarbalas additional in my budget in order to do this thing to prevent this from happening. And then we start going into the techno speak and the jargon and all that stuff. And they're sitting there saying, you know what? I've got a quarterly number I have to meet. And you're fiddling around with my quarterly number. My operational expense is going to go up. That's going to make our numbers not look as good. And they're thinking about the quarter. I believe there was even a book I read a long time ago called The Quarter. It was about economics in America and how things have changed because of quarterly earnings reports. Well, I'm not over. So the idea is that what you're dealing with is an audience, typically, who are like this guy. They're sprinters. Do we all know who this is, by the way? Can you take a guess? Usain Bolt, right? But look at the musculature. You know, big arms, huge thighs. I just keep telling stories. I don't know what's wrong. I've got problems. So, you know, I'll just think positive thoughts for me. Just, he can get better. He can get better. So at any rate, in high school, I was a shot putter. Of course I was. I was huge. I was overweight. And so, you know, shot put, the big metal thing, it's like it's the weight of a bowling ball, but the size of a softball. You know, and you do this thing, you spin around it, or you throw it, it goes, however far it goes. And yeah, I'm an athlete. You know, so oddly enough, shot putters use the same muscles typically as sprinters. So the coach said, hey, you guys go work out with the sprinters. So we would do the 50 meters and 100 meters with them and everything. And lo and behold, we came to find something out. In 100 meters or less, I could beat all the sprinters. I was faster than the sprinters, even though I was like big, fat, and overweight, because I had very strong legs. Now, 101 meters, I was done. I was gasping, sucking wind like a landlocked tuna. I was just like down for the count. But for that 100 meters, man, I could go all out anaerobic and make it happen. So it's all about that short-term, explosive, immediate gain. And that's the mindset of boards. That's the mindset of CEOs and your senior executives. Typically, there's always exceptions. I've got the big white broad brush out that I'm painting with now. But these are typical ideas. And the idea is they're thinking about the near-term benefits of spending and show me the return right away. And I think Kevin Johnson said it in his keynote address in this room, but like it was more like he was centered over here, just yesterday, that we're a cost. IT and specifically security is just a cost. There's very little ROI. It's more like we're avoidance of loss rather than return on investment. And what was the old saying for those of you that are old enough to remember? Avoidance of loss would be AOL. And does everybody remember this phrase? Friends don't let friends AOL. So avoidance of loss just doesn't have the same buzzword cachet as ROI does. But that's what we're really doing. And it's not very sexy. We're talking about things that might happen and making preventative steps so that they don't happen. So we can't go in and say, well, yeah, you guys think this way, but I think this way. I'm like a marathon guy. Built very differently. Long, slender, thin muscles, very, very elongated muscles. Because if you have to carry all that weight of muscle on a 26-mile run, it's just no fun. It's no fun at all. I have done many hikes in my life. I was, as I said, a member formerly of Uncle Sam's Misguided Children. Uncle Sam's Mickey Mouse Club, the USMC. And so sometimes we would take little nature hikes. We'd just go for the walk. And sometimes we would carry 40 pounds on our backs when we would do that. Sometimes we would carry 80 pounds when we would do that. And every so often, we would carry 120 pounds when we did that. Batteries. See, I was in signals intelligence. We had to use radios. Battery technology today is way better than it used to be. We had nickel-cadmium batteries. They would look like bricks, and they weighed like bricks. And if we were going out for a 7-day detachment or 7-day adventure in the woods, we had to carry the batteries to power the gear. And batteries weigh a lot. So you move slow, you take a long time, but you go. But man, long distances, a lot of weight, it's hard. That's why marathon runners don't look like me. They're thin. They have long, elongated muscles. So we go in with our mindset of, but we're thinking about the future. This is going to happen. This is coming down the pike. You've got to understand it. And they're looking at you going, buddy, how are you going to win a sprint? And so that's the idea. Understanding their cognitive bias is going to be different than yours. And you've got your own, but it's this awareness that we have to come to. We have to think about this. So how can we overcome it? It's the same way that most people tend to overcome not saving for retirement, not getting out of debt, not losing weight, and things like that. You do it in small, bite-sized chunks. You put it in small nibbles. You make it with a lot of attainable, short-term benefits to the company. That's what you have to get your mind around and kind of reframe the context, because the context is everything. We've learned that. Again, don't raise your hands. Who considered maybe taking the pen home? Maybe. Who considered taking the cash? Nobody. It's just framing the context. The result is the same, but it's understanding the context. So you have to begin thinking about how can I put in context for my executives the short-term wins, the benefits, and you're going to have to go and do some research and some studies. I hope you like to read. You probably do, or you wouldn't be in this career field. But you need to read outside of just the hacking blogs and all that. You need to look at other disciplines and get tools that can assist you and help you understand things like cognitive bias, things like communication, things like writing well, taking a simple free course, easypeasy.com or easypeasysomething.com. You can find there's free courses on writing out there. You need to be improving your skills outside of the areas of technology as well, so that you can go and learn how to communicate to your executives, and you need to do it by forming a relationship with them. Now, some people, and I'm guilty of this fact, sometimes in the past, I tended to try to use, say, the fog of war to just basically buffalo my way through, rather than taking the time and effort to educate and try to explain to senior staff what we needed to do and why. I would just scare them with big numbers. I would just go and say, okay, here's the Ponymon Research Institute. It says that the average cost of a typical breach is $223. We have 90,000 customers. Da-da-da, do the math. That's a $27.1 million loss, and blah, blah, blah. And I would write the whole thing up and send it to them. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, But that's probably not the best way to do it. So rather than seek to confuse, seek to overwhelm with, technical jargon, we need to seek to enlighten, you know? And maybe you think I'm totally full of it, and that's okay. My kids probably do, so why shouldn't you? Maybe my wife does half the time, I don't know. But we should seek to enlighten and educate. If you think there's any merit to this, and you do further research and decide, you know what, cognitive bias is a real thing, especially in this area of short-term gains being greater for smaller rewards than long-term gains with a greater reward. If you believe it, then maybe you should educate yourself about it and then begin trying to educate those whom you're trying to win over to your side about the same biases. Because when people are given information, they tend to make better choices, rather they're just going in the dark and just picking from things that look alike. So the last thought, and then I'll leave 5 minutes and 22 seconds for questions, is that, you know, one of the last things that Dan Ariely said in his books, actually was one of the first things, but I'm saying it last, is that if you're a person who is trying to choose on going on a trip, and you and your wife, or you and your husband, want to go to, you can't decide. You want to go to a romantic thing in Paris, you know, the Louvre, all that, or maybe you want to go to Rome and see the Colosseum and all that good stuff. And you're just really having a hard time deciding. And they're both all expenses paid, you know, free breakfast every day, all that sort of stuff. And you just can't decide. If you have a smart travel agent who's putting this together for you, what they will do is they will give you a third choice. They will give you a trip to Rome that doesn't include free breakfast, and you have to pay for your own taxis. And all of a sudden, most of us will be inclined to pick the trip to Rome that includes everything. It's just human nature, because we see two things that are dissimilar and we don't know how to quite compare them. But if we see two things that are dissimilar that seem kind of equal, and then we see one that's very much like this one, but it's not quite as good, all of a sudden, since we have a frame of reference, this is a rational choice in our minds, it makes sense, though it's totally irrational to do that. And we tend to do things like that all the time. So if you're having difficulty getting an initiative approved, give two choices that look similar, but they can't quite evaluate. Give another one that's close to this one, but not quite as good, maybe a little bit more expensive or something, and you'll probably be able to steer them in the way of decision. It's just taking advantage of cognitive bias. And then, you know, if they say, how did you do that to us? Then you explain cognitive bias, and maybe you start the dialogue and the conversation so you can move forward. All right, 4 minutes for questions. I'm done. Oh, come on. Don't be you. Be the future you. Be nice. Ask a question. All right, thanks for your time.